When desperation meets destiny, some marriages begin with love, others begin with a signature on paper. Theirs began with both knowing exactly what they were getting into, and neither understanding what they would become. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. Natasha Bennett stood outside the marble building on Fifth Avenue, watching water cascade down glass windows that reflected a city too expensive for people like her. Inside that building waited an answer to problems that had been drowning her slowly, one unpaid bill at a time. She clutched her worn leather bag tighter, feeling the weight of her mother's hospital bills inside, and pushed through the revolving door. The law office of Henderson and Associates smelled like old books and new money, a combination that made her stomach twist with inadequacy. Everything here cost more than she earned in a month. The receptionist, perfectly manicured and polished, directed her to the 3rd floor with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Thomas Carrington was already there when she arrived, standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. He didn't turn when she entered, but she knew he'd heard her. Everything about him suggested awareness, control, precision. His suit was dark gray, expensive without being showy. His hair, black with hints of silver at the temples, was styled with casual perfection. When he finally turned to face her, his eyes were the color of winter seas, pale blue and utterly unreadable. "Miss Bennett." His voice was deeper than she expected, measured and calm. "Thank you for coming." She'd seen his picture online during her frantic research the night before. Thomas Carrington, founder of Carrington Technologies, self-made billionaire by 35, now 42. Known for his innovation in sustainable energy and his complete absence from social media. The articles called him brilliant, ruthless, and intensely private. They also called him devastatingly attractive, which the photographs hadn't quite captured. In person, he was more striking, more present, more everything. Mr. Henderson explained the situation. Natasha said, proud that her voice stayed steady. "But I still don't understand why you'd choose me." A lawyer, Mr. Henderson himself, gestured for her to sit. "Let me explain the specifics. Mr. Carrington's late father established a trust fund worth $60 million. To access it before age 45, Mr. Carrington must be married for a minimum of 18 months. The marriage must be legally binding and appear authentic to the Board of Trustees. Why not just wait 3 years?" Natasha asked, looking at Thomas. For the first time, something flickered in those ice-blue eyes. The trust fund's a research facility developing affordable clean energy solutions for developing nations. Every day we delay is another day people live without reliable power, without clean water systems, without hope. He paused. "My father designed this requirement because he believed I was too focused on work, too isolated. He wanted to force me into human connection. It was misguided, but the trust terms are ironclad. So you need a wife who won't complicate things," Natasha said slowly. "I need someone intelligent enough to navigate my world, desperate enough to agree to unusual terms, and honest enough not to try renegotiating once we're married." Thomas sat down across from her, his gaze direct. "Your background check was thorough. You're 26, working 3 jobs while getting your master's in environmental science. Your mother has advanced Parkinson's disease. You're $60,000 in debt between medical bills and student loans. You have no criminal record, no social media presence, and according to everyone we interviewed, you're pathologically incapable of lying." Heat crept up Natasha's neck. They'd investigated everything. Her entire struggling life laid out for evaluation. "The offer is straightforward," Henderson continued, sliding a document across his desk. "You marry Mr. Carrington, live in his home, appear with him at necessary social functions. After 18 months and 1 day, you divorce amicably. Your compensation is $800,000 paid in installments. First payment of $200,000 upon marriage, the rest at divorce. $800,000. Natasha's hands trembled. That would pay for her mother's care at the best facility in the state for years. Would clear her debts. Would let her finish her degree without working herself into exhaustion. Would give her room to breathe for the first time since her father died when she was 17. "There are rules," Thomas said, his tone businesslike. "We maintain separate bedrooms. No physical relationship. Complete discretion. You don't discuss our arrangement with anyone. After 18 months, we part ways cleanly. No contact. You want a wife who'll disappear when you're done with her," Natasha said, unable to keep the edge from her voice. "I want someone who understands this is a transaction." His expression remained neutral. but something in his voice suggested old wounds carefully bandaged. Romance is a fairy tale, people tell themselves. This is honest. We both get what we need without the mess of false expectations. Natasha looked at the contract, at the number written there in clean black ink. She thought about her mother, who no longer recognized her half the time but still deserved dignity and proper care. She thought about the eviction notice on her apartment door, about the credit card company threatening legal action, about the bone-deep exhaustion of trying to survive in a city built for people with money she'd never have. When would this start? She asked quietly. Immediately. I have a charity gala in 4 days where I need to introduce my fiancé. We'd marry by the end of next week. Thomas leaned forward slightly. I know this is unusual, but I'm offering you a way out of your situation, and you're offering me access to resources that will change thousands of lives. It's mutually beneficial. It's cold, Natasha said. It's practical. He held her gaze. I won't pretend to love you. I won't pretend this is anything other than what it is, but I will treat you with respect. You'll have freedom, resources, and at the end, enough money to build whatever life you want. That's more than most marriages offer. He wasn't wrong. Natasha had watched her parents' marriage crumble under financial stress, had seen love wither when the mortgage couldn't be paid. She'd seen her mother care for her father through cancer only to develop Parkinson's herself, as if devotion guaranteed heartbreak. I need an answer now, Thomas said. I have another candidate meeting me in an hour. You're my first choice because I believe you'll honor the contract. But I need certainty. Natasha picked up the pen Henderson offered. Her hand hovered over the signature line. This was insane. People didn't really do this outside of movies, did they? But the numbers didn't lie. The desperation was real. And something in Thomas Carrington's winter blue eyes suggested he understood desperation too, even if his came wrapped in expensive suits and penthouse apartments. If I do this, she said carefully, I want one addition to the contract. Weekly dinners together. Just to maintain the appearance of an actual relationship. Thomas's eyebrow rose slightly. Why? Because if we never spend time together, people will notice. Your father's trustees aren't stupid. They'll see through a completely separate existence. He considered this, then nodded to Henderson. Add it, Wednesday dinners, 1 hour minimum. Henderson made the notation. Natasha took a breath that felt like standing at the edge of a cliff and signed her name. Thomas signed below hers, his signature bold and decisive. When he extended his hand to shake, his palm was warm, his grip firm and brief. But in that moment of contact, Natasha felt something unexpected. A spark of recognition, of two people who'd both learned to survive by building walls around their hearts. Welcome to the arrangement, Miss Bennett, Thomas said, already standing, already moving toward the door. A car will collect you tomorrow at 5. Bring what you need for the next week. We'll arrange the rest. Then he was gone, leaving only the faint scent of expensive cologne and the feeling that Natasha had just agreed to something far more complicated than a simple business transaction. She looked down at her left hand, bare for now but soon to wear a ring that meant everything and nothing. Outside the windows, the rain continued falling on a city that never stopped moving, never stopped demanding, never stopped taking from people who had nothing left to give. Except now, maybe she had a way to stop falling, even if it meant falling into something else entirely. The space between strangers, the penthouse occupied the entire 65th floor of the Millennium Tower, and Natasha's first thought was that no one person should have this much space. Her second thought was that Thomas Carrington didn't actually live here. He existed here, worked here, maybe slept here occasionally, but the pristine marble and glass and steel felt like a museum, not a home. Your quarters are this way, Thomas said, leading her through rooms that flowed into each other with architectural precision. Everything was in shades of gray and white, modern art on the walls that probably cost more than her childhood home. You have the entire east wing, bedroom, bathroom, study, private terrace. The household staff comes daily, but they're discreet. He opened a door to reveal a suite larger than her entire apartment. The bed was enormous, dressed in white linens that looked impossibly soft. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city lights beginning to glow in the early evening. A door led to a bathroom with a tub that could fit 3 people and a shower with more settings than her car had. This is too much, Natasha said. It's what's available. Thomas checked his watch, platinum and understated. I'm in the West Wing. The kitchen is fully stocked, though I usually eat at the office. Make yourself comfortable. Tomorrow we'll go over the schedule for the gala. Wait, Natasha set down her suitcase. That's it? You're just leaving? I have work to finish. It's 7 o'clock. We just got married according to the contract timeline. Don't you think we should at least talk? Learn basic things about each other? Thomas paused in the doorway, his expression unreadable. What do you want to know? I don't know. Favorite food? Coffee preference? Do you have siblings? What do you do for fun? I don't have time for fun, Miss Bennet. It's Mrs. Carrington now, actually, she said, unable to help herself. At least on paper. Something flickered across his face, too quick to identify. Natasha, then. And you can call me Thomas. He ran a hand through his hair, mussing the perfect styling. I drink black coffee, work 16-hour days, and haven't taken a vacation in 8 years. I had a brother. He died when I was 16. I don't have favorite foods because I usually forget to eat until my assistant reminds me. Is that sufficient? The pain in his voice when he mentioned his brother made Natasha's chest ache. I'm sorry about your brother. It was a long time ago. His walls slammed back up. Anything else? Just that this is going to be a very long 18 months if we treat each other like strangers. We are strangers. But he didn't leave. Instead, he leaned against the doorframe, studying her with those unsettling blue eyes. What about you? What do I need to know about Natasha Bennet? I love Thunderstorm, she said impulsively. I'm allergic to strawberries but eat them anyway because they're worth the itching. I wanted to be a marine biologist when I was little, but couldn't afford the Coastal University. I sing off-key when I'm nervous, and I don't do well with silence. I fill it with words even when I shouldn't. I've noticed, Thomas said, but there was the ghost of a smile on his lips. Your turn. Tell me something real. He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then I'm afraid of forgetting my brother's voice. It's been 26 years and sometimes I can't remember what he sounded like when he laughed. The vulnerability in that confession made something shift in Natasha's chest. This cold, controlled man carried grief like she did, buried so deep it only surfaced in unguarded moments. What was his name? She asked softly. Daniel. Danny. He was 12 when the car accident happened. I was driving. Thomas, I don't want sympathy. He straightened, the walls rebuilding. I'm just answering your question. You wanted something real. Thank you for telling me. Natasha moved closer, not touching but present. For what it's worth, my father had a recording of himself reading The Hobbit to me when I was 6. I listen to it sometimes when I need to remember his voice. Maybe there's something similar for you. Home videos, voicemails? I destroyed everything after the funeral. I couldn't look at it. His jaw tightened. Anyway, that's ancient history. The gala is Saturday. A stylist will come Friday morning to prepare you. I've told my board we met at an environmental conference 6 months ago. We kept it quiet because I value privacy. Can you remember that? Back to business, the moment of connection sealed away like it had never happened. But Natasha had seen the crack in his armor, and she knew now that Thomas Carrington wasn't as cold as he pretended to be. He was just protecting himself the only way he knew how. The next few days fell into a strange rhythm. Thomas left before dawn and returned after dark. Natasha spent her days at the university, working on her thesis about renewable energy in coastal communities, trying to ignore the surreal fact that she now lived in a penthouse and had an $800,000 arrangement with a man she barely knew. They barely spoke except for logistics. The ring arrived by courier, a stunning sapphire surrounded by diamonds that matched her eyes. She wore it and felt like a fraud. At night, she'd hear Thomas moving through the penthouse, his study light visible under the door at 2, 3, 4 in the morning. She wanted to knock to ask if he was okay, but the contract was clear. Separate lives, minimal contact. Friday morning, the stylist Vivian arrived with 3 assistants and enough clothes to stock a boutique. Mr. Carrington has excellent taste, Vivian declared, pulling out a midnight blue gown that probably cost more than Natasha's car. He selected this one himself. Natasha emerged from her room that evening to find Thomas waiting in the living room. He'd been looking at his phone, but when she appeared, he looked up and went completely still. Is it wrong? Natasha asked, suddenly self-conscious in the gown that fit like it had been made for her body. No. His voice was rough. It's perfect. You look extraordinary. Heat flooded her cheeks. This was for show, she reminded herself. He needed her to look the part. But the way he was looking at her didn't feel like business. It felt like something dangerous and real and completely unplanned. We should go over the story, Thomas said, clearing his throat. But he didn't look away. Environmental conference 6 months ago, kept it private, Natasha recited. You swept me off my feet with your passionate speech about solar panel efficiency. I don't do passionate speeches. Maybe you should start. She smiled. People might like you more. I don't need people to like me. I need them to respect my work. You can have both, you know. Thomas crossed the room, stopping close enough that she could smell his cologne, cedar, and something darker. When we're at the gala, I'll need to touch you. Hand on your back, arm around your waist. Are you comfortable with that? Her pulse jumped. It's part of the arrangement. That's not what I asked. His eyes searched hers. I need to know you're okay with this. The consideration in his voice surprised her. I'm okay with it. Good. But he didn't step back. They stood in the elegant living room, the city lights painting shadows across his face, and Natasha felt the air between them charged with something neither of them had bargained for. Thomas, she whispered, not even sure what she was asking. We should go, he said roughly, finally stepping away. The car is waiting. When walls begin to crumble, the Greystone Gala was everything Natasha had feared and nothing she'd expected. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and designer gowns, with diamonds that caught light like captured stars, and conversations that cost more than most people's yearly salaries. But what surprised her most was Thomas. He transformed in public, his usual cold efficiency warming into something almost charming. His hand never left her back, a constant point of connection that felt both protective and possessive. Thomas, darling. A woman in emerald silk materialized beside them, her eyes calculating as they assessed Natasha. You've been hiding someone from us. Catherine. Thomas's smile didn't reach his eyes. This is Natasha, my fiancée. Natasha Catherine Blake runs the city's largest investment firm. How did you two meet? Catherine's tone suggested she already knew the answer would be inadequate. Environmental conference in Seattle, Natasha said smoothly. He gave a presentation on sustainable infrastructure that changed how I thought about coastal development. I spilled coffee on his notes afterward and had to buy him dinner to apologize. Thomas's hand tightened on her waist, surprised. They hadn't rehearsed that detail. How romantic, Catherine said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. And when's the wedding? Soon, Thomas said firmly. We prefer to keep the details private. Throughout the evening, Natasha watched Thomas navigate the social waters with practiced ease, but she also saw the exhaustion around his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. When they finally escaped to a quiet balcony for air, he sagged slightly against the railing. You're good at this, Natasha observed. The social performance. I've had decades of practice. He loosened his tie. My father used to drag me to these events, said I needed to learn how to be human instead of just brilliant. What happened to him? Heart attack 5 years ago. He'd built this empire, established the trust to force me into living instead of just working, then died before seeing if his plan would work. Thomas stared out at the city. The irony is I'm doing exactly what he feared, using his attempt at forcing connection as just another business transaction. Is that what this is? Natasha moved closer. Just business? He turned to look at her, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. What else would it be? I don't know. Her heart was racing. But when you told me about your brother, when you look at me like you're doing right now, it doesn't feel like business. Natasha? His voice carried warning. I'm not saying I expect anything, she interrupted. I know the contract. I know the rules. But I also know that we're both human beings who've learned to survive by not feeling too much. Maybe that's why your father set up the trust the way he did. Not to trap you, but to give you permission to let someone in. My father didn't know what he was doing. Thomas's jaw tightened. Love doesn't save people. Danny died in my car because I was distracted, upset about a girl who'd broken my heart. I swore then I'd never let emotions cloud my judgment again. That's not love's fault, Thomas. That's tragedy. They're different. Are they? He moved closer, his intensity almost overwhelming. Every time I've cared about someone, they've left. My brother died. My mother blamed me and cut me off. My father tried to control me from beyond the grave. Everyone I've loved has abandoned me in one way or another. Not everyone, Natasha said softly. Your father created that trust because he loved you, because he wanted you to have more than just work and loneliness. That's not abandonment. That's hope. Thomas stared at her, something raw and desperate flickering in his eyes. "You're dangerous, Natasha Bennett." "Why?" "Because you make me want things I promised myself I'd never want again." The confession hung between them, electric and terrifying. Natasha's breath caught. They were standing so close now that she could feel the heat radiating from him, could count the shades of blue in his eyes. "What do you want?" she whispered. Instead of answering, Thomas reached up and tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. The gesture was achingly gentle, completely at odds with his usual control. "We should go back inside. People will talk." "Let them talk." "Natasha." Her name on his lips sounded like a prayer and a warning. "We can't do this." "Why not?" "Because in 18 months you'll leave. And I don't know if I'll survive losing someone else He stopped himself, shaking his head. This was supposed to be simple. Nothing about people is simple. Natasha covered his hand with hers, the one still touching her face. But maybe that's okay. Maybe complicated is better than lonely. Thomas looked at her like she was a puzzle he desperately wanted to solve, but was afraid of the answer. Then slowly, carefully, he leaned down and pressed his forehead to hers. Not a kiss, but something more intimate. A moment of complete surrender, of walls crumbling despite every effort to keep them standing. "What are we doing?" he breathed. "I don't know," Natasha admitted, "but I don't think we can stop it." They stood like that on the balcony, the gala continuing inside without them, the city stretching endlessly below, two people who'd agreed to a simple transaction discovering that the human heart rarely follows contracts. When they finally returned to the ballroom, something had shifted. Thomas's hand found hers and didn't let go. They danced, and his arms held her closer than necessary. When people asked about their relationship, the affection in his voice wasn't entirely manufactured anymore. Later that night, back at the penthouse, Thomas walked Natasha to her door instead of disappearing immediately to his study. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For tonight, for the conversation, for not giving up on me despite how difficult I make it." "You're not difficult," Natasha said. "You're just scared. I understand that. I'm scared too." "Of what?" "That in 18 months I'll have to walk away from someone I'm starting to care about." Thomas's eyes widened slightly. Then, before she could second-guess herself, Natasha stood on her toes and kissed his cheek, quick and gentle. "Good night, Thomas." She slipped into her room before he could respond, heart pounding. Through the door, she heard him standing there for a long moment. Then his footsteps retreated, but this time toward the kitchen instead of his study. Natasha smiled. Small victories. The walls were crumbling, one careful brick at a time, and despite the contract, despite the rules, despite every logical reason to keep their distance, she found herself hoping that maybe, just maybe, they could build something real in the spaces where the walls used to be, because the truth was Thomas Carrington had been right. She was dangerous, but he was dangerous too, with his wounded eyes and careful heart and the way he looked at her like she might be the answer to a question he'd been afraid to ask. They were both in trouble. The best kind of trouble. The kind that felt like coming home.